Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe, and today we are going to be looking at a huge list of the wide receivers that are coming out in the 2024 NFL Draft. And then after looking at a big list, we're going to focus in on a bunch of players and we'll talk about how they could fit with the Saints. So the Saints, in my opinion, are at a yellow alert when it comes to wide receiver. I think that it has to be addressed several times, not necessarily in the draft, but this draft class is so deep, and I give it a grade of A minus, that it would be a shame to get out of this draft without at least grabbing one player. Now, when all the compensatory picks are allocated, the Saints should have a total of about 9 draft picks. And since wide receiver to me is a yellow alert, they should be taking a chance on somebody in this draft. There are a lot of really good players, players that could fit into the scheme, players that could fit on the Saints because of what the Saints lack. So we look at the active roster right now, and there's only 2 players. You know we're going to re-sign Rashid Shaheed. And there's reports that Michael Thomas is still under contract. Whatever contract Michael Thomas might be under right now, it's got to be renegotiated one way or the other. And I think what's going to happen is the Saints are just going to cut him loose and we're just going to eat whatever we owe. I don't think there's any chance Thomas comes back. And I continue to label him a free agent. And so, in my opinion, we certainly re-signed Rashid Shaheed. That gives us 3 players. And because Lynn Bowden Jr. is a exclusive rights guy or a restricted guy, one or the other, I'm pretty sure we can get Lynn Bowden back. And I think Lynn Bowden would fit pretty good into this scheme. So that would give us 4 wide receivers. And typically we run with 5, sometimes 6. So looking at the way the roster is right now, I know a lot of people want A.T. Perry to be our starting X wide receiver. And he shows a lot of promise. But I can't go into a season thinking that he is going to be an integral part in this offense, a complete where we have no issues. I think A.T. Perry has still a little bit of a learning curve, but you got to get him on the field so he can show what he can do. So the way I look at it is you go and get another bigger wide receiver, somebody that can play that X spot. And then I believe you also need a wide receiver who would be good at catching the ball, getting open, catching the ball, and yards after the catch. So not necessarily a guy based on his size, but on a certain skill set that this team lacks. A.T. Perry's our only big guy, so we need another big guy. And if you go and get a veteran that can play that X, then you'll have a lot more confidence going into the season, I think. And then you grab another guy that could specialize in yards after catch. Like I've said before, Chris Olave is completely unimaginative with the ball in his hands. And he's shown some progress from his rookie year to this past season. But I count on him getting open constantly, and I count on him catching the ball. But I don't count on him making big plays if he gets the ball behind the line of scrimmage or anything like that. Rashid Shaheed's more of the kind of a guy that can do that. And I still think as an undrafted guy, he's got a lot of speed, but we don't know what else he can really do. I mean, we've seen him rip off huge plays, huge runs, lots of yards after the catch is a potential with Rashid Shaheed for me. So I think you need 2 wide receivers. You need a big body and you need a yak guy. So in this draft, you've got way too many good players to choose from, and you can go either way. I think you address it both ways, the draft and free agency. It'd be nice to get a veteran in here, free agent, wide receiver, who you know can be a starter. And that's probably going to cost you $10 million a year, but you got to go and get one of those guys. I think that would be the best thing to do, and have a bona fide veteran starter with size opposite Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and then A.T. Perry can be your number 4. I feel good about that. And then Lynn Bowden Jr. as your number 5. He knows he can play running back. He can return kicks. He plays special teams. He can run block. So I think there's a spot for him. But you can also get better from a guy like Lynn Bowden Jr. I personally think you can get better from anybody that's a 6th-round pick or an undrafted pick. And I don't want to put any shade on Rashid Shaheed. He might turn out to be the diamond in the rough, and we keep utilizing him. I like the progress. A.T. Perry, same thing, but I believe we can get better. So that's my goal for the Saints. And as far as the draft goes, man, oh man, you got a lot of players to choose from. I'm going to pull up this list, and this is 50 players, 51 players. And I'm leaving out at least 20 names on this list that you can fit somewhere between probably the 3rd round and 6th round. And I'm leaving off a good 20 names. And I'm sure there's 40, 50 other names besides these that are options. You know, the Saints are pretty good at rookie, undrafted guys. We have a lot of success in picking wide receivers that don't get drafted. Well, these are all names of guys, and some of these at the bottom might not get drafted, but these are all a big list of players that could get drafted in this draft. Now, if you go back and watch any of my videos focusing on the positions in the draft, and you look at these big lists, you'll notice in every position group between the 2nd round and the 4th round is a log jam, and a lot of those players, in my opinion, you know, are at about the same talent level. So Mike Detillier always says you usually have like 16 players that are a 1st-round grade in every draft class, about 16 players, and then after that you're talking about 2nd-round picks. And yeah, that's about the same in this draft. Once you start picking in the second half of the 1st round, you start to see you have options. You know, there's no clear-cut number 1 guy. After you get to that around pick 14, 15, 16, we pick at 14. And so I think that the talent between the second half of the 1st round through the 2nd round, I think that talent level is about the same for those group of players. Now, somewhere within the 2nd round, you get into a group of players that's at another talent level, and I believe that stretches through the 4th round and halfway through the 4th round. So my point has always been, if you don't get one of those top 14, 16 guys, you might as well trade back, because you're going to have about 30-something to choose from after that. And then you're going to probably have another 60-something to choose from after that. That's all in the same talent base. So if you can stockpile on a couple of 2nd-round picks, I think you'd be just as good off or even better than having that one good 1st-round pick. That's my opinion when it comes to the draft. You can look at all the lists on all my videos and you'll see the same thing. Just chock a block full of players that are supposed to go in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round. Okay, so the Saints don't have a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick. So when I highlight these players, it's typically the Saints are either going to have to acquire picks, or they're going to have to reach for one of these guys in the 2nd round, or they're going to have to hope that one of these guys falls into the 5th round, because that's where we're at right now with our draft picks. So before I pull this list down, and it's here so you guys can come back and look at it, pause the video if you want to look at all of it, but I'm going to highlight a ton of players today. And before I pull this list down, we're going to look at the top 3 here: Marvin Harrison, Malik Nabers, Rome Odunze. Those 3 should be drafted before the Saints pick at 14. If either one of those wide receivers are on the board when the Saints pick at 14, the Saints can go ahead and draft one of those players. It would be worth the pick. Harrison and Neighbors and Odunze. They all three have size. They all three have speed. They are, in my opinion, unquestionably the top three wide receivers in this class. And unanimously, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. And then, depending on what your team's looking for, Neighbors or Odunze, I think both of them are going to turn out to be great pros. And if either one of those three guys are on the board when we pick at 14, that might be our pick. But I'm assuming all three will be gone. So is there anyone else at wide receiver that the Saints could take at number 14? Well, in my opinion, there's four guys that you could pick at 14, and it wouldn't be a horrible reach. And number one on that list is Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. He'll be there at pick 14, and a lot of people are mocking the Saints to draft him. So he's right at that spot between, the bona fide top 16 first-round picks and then the rest of the guys that float around that first pick, maybe into the second round. Brian Thomas, to me, is a bona fide first-round pick. 6'4", 205 pounds. The only questions anybody really has for him is if he can be a number one wide receiver, because Neighbors was number one technically on the team. And, of course, in college you're asked to run certain routes, and so maybe they want to see if Thomas can run the whole route tree successfully, be a number one X guy or whatever, the questions may be. I don't think there's much questions here. I'm a Louisiana guy. I watched LSU this past season, and yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. to me is a sure first round lock. Now, should the Saints take him at 14? Well, if they do, I'm not going to be upset. I think it's a touch of a reach. My intention is to trade down and pick up extra mid-round picks so we can have a better draft with better players instead of having 7 players in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round. I hate that. The thought of that drives me crazy. So, yeah, if Brian Thomas Jr. is here and you can trade down to the 20th pick or something like that, you might miss out on Brian Thomas Jr., but I promise you that you're still going to have a draft full of really good tackles, guards, lots of great players still on the board, defensive linemen, cornerbacks, and safeties will all still be there. And you'll have your choice at wide receivers if you trade down too. Picking Brian Thomas Jr. at number 14 is about probably the only option the Saints will have at wide receiver if they use that 14th pick. They may also consider these three guys who are rated right around where Thomas is. And we'll start with Keon Coleman out of Florida State, 6'4", 215 pounds. Coleman was he's always been a first round projection, but he floats around that first to second round now. I think, like I said, the Saints could use a big bodied guy, and we could also use a yards after catch guy. So as far as the type of receivers these guys are, the Saints could find a place for them. I don't think they're in love with Keon Coleman to go ahead and draft him at pick 14. But he is a consideration since he's one of those first-round projections. And there's 2 more first-round projections I'll mention here in play for pick 14. One of them, A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. What a stud, 6'4", 196 pounds. Brian Thomas Jr. is a pretty good run blocker. Keon Coleman, not so much. But A.D. Mitchell is a good run blocker. And, Texas had an incredible wide receiving core this year. They have 2 players, just like LSU. They're going to be drafted in the first 2 rounds, but they got a couple of other receivers that'll be going, and we're going to highlight those later. But A.D. Mitchell is the best of the bunch. He's got great speed, great size. All of these wide receivers, the top 7 are 6'3" or 6'4". I mean, that's what the league wants. You're the biggest, fastest dude, we'll go after you. A.D. Mitchell should be drafted before the first round's over because I think there's some teams at the end of the first round that are wide receiver needy. And yeah, I expect Mitchell to be gone. So he's at play at pick 14. And one more guy in the first round we need to look at, Troy Franklin out of Oregon, 6'3", 187 pounds. He's the lightest of the bunch. And yeah, he's falls into that lower first round area. But if you don't take him at 14, he'll likely be gone by the time you pick in the second round. So Thomas, Coleman, Mitchell, Franklin, all of them first round projections. And those are the guys in play for pick 14 for the Saints, if one of those top three guys doesn't fall down to 14. So the next pick the Saints have are at pick 45 in the second round. And this is where I think a lot of the wide receivers are going to start going. Bottom of the first round through the second round. And I'm going to start by mentioning these three players who are at the top of the second round. They may not be there at 45, but they are certainly in play for the Saints. And we're going to start with Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. Solid second round projection. Someone may want to grab him at the end of the first round because McConkey shows a willingness to run block. And at 6 foot, 185 pounds, he doesn't have size advantage, but he's willing to run block. And he's good enough at it where I think it wouldn't be a detriment to the team. And his biggest positive is getting open. He's got route running and he's got moves. And in my opinion, in that area, he kind of reminds me of Olave, where if you get McConkey, you're expecting him to get open quick in short areas, in medium areas. The guy can get open. Now, once he gets the ball in his hands, he's pretty good after the catch and making a lot of people miss. But, your negative is his size. So if you've got a couple of big receivers, if you're just looking for somebody who can get open and catch the ball, and isn't that the point of a wide receiver anyway? Just get open and catch the ball. I think McConkey can get open on a regular basis with ease, and he's going to catch the ball. He's got the potential to do something with it once he has it in his hands, unlike a lot of players on our team right now. I don't know if Ladd McConkey gets picked in the first round, but I'm pretty sure before the Saints draft at 45, someone's going to grab him. He gets mocked to the Panthers a lot with the first pick in the second round. Ladd McConkey is one of those guys that, despite his size, you just feel like he's a sure thing. At worst, he's going to be your slot receiver and a possession guy. And yeah, I like McConkey a lot. Don't think he's going to be there, though. Another guy to look at is Xavier Worthy, the number 2 wide receiver out of Texas. 6'1", 172 pounds. He is light. He's got nice height, and I think he could add some weight. And he's got a lot of moves and speed right now, so whether that affects his weight or his speed or not if he puts on weight. But I think 172 is a little too light for my liking. Worthy's a playmaker, though, with the ball in his hands. So he's a guy that if he lasts and he's there at pick 45, it would not shock me that the Saints take him. Another guy that's 6'1" that is supposed to go in the second round is Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. He's probably the worst run blocker out of the bunch. His college had him listed at 6'3", and then he shows up at the Senior Bowl and he's only 6'1". But the weight was right at 227. And he's a big boy when it comes to his thickness. And he plays bigger than 6'1". I don't think his height is the issue here, although I hate that anybody would lie about how tall they are. Maybe it's the college's fault. Anyway, Legette was high on my list for a long time because of what he did in college. But he's a little inconsistent with catching the ball, and he was very inconsistent at the Senior Bowl. And it kind of knocked his stock down. So with this in mind, he may very well still be there at pick 45 in the second round. And do the Saints want to take a chance on him? There's a lot of ability there. I just hate that when the moment was there in the Senior Bowl, he couldn't remain consistent. He had bad days, he had good days, and like I said, the talent's there. So he's a second round projection to me. But when it's all said and done, he might be one of those guys that teams keep passing up to take a chance on someone else who might be more consistent. So there you go, Xavier Legette, Ladd McConkey, Xavier Worthy. Those guys, if they're there at pick 45, the Saints may go that route at wide receiver, a second round pick. There's three other guys I'm going to mention in contention for pick 45 for the Saints. And the first one I'm going to mention is a lot like Xavier Legette to me. Devontae Walker out of North Carolina, 6'2", 200 pounds. Walker didn't have the best Senior Bowl either. So that's my issue. Another guy I was pretty high on watching the film, thinking, yeah, this is a steal in the second round. Just like Legette, I thought Walker was going to be one of those guys. Not a very good run blocker. He's got good size at 6'2", but he was inconsistent in catching the ball in the Senior Bowl. And so I hate that. I hate the thought of that. I hate the thought of drafting someone whose hands are an issue. Walker seemed to catch a lot of everything in college. So much like Legette, you've got a lot of ability to work with. And because you don't draft until the fifth round, again, if you find any of these guys in the second round worth taking, they're not going to be there in the fifth. Another guy with a lot of ability, Ja'Lynn Polk out of Washington. Now, Rome Odunze was number one wide receiver that's taken, and Ja'Lynn Polk looks to be the number two guy out of Washington. 6'2", 204 pounds, great size, good speed. He shows he can do a little bit of everything. I think Polk is one of those surefire second-round guys. He may be a higher regarded wide receiver in the second round than everyone else I've mentioned. Ladd McConkey out of Georgia had such a good Senior Bowl, but he's 6 foot and under 200 pounds. So with Polk, you got a 6'2" guy, 204. So there's some more of those measurables that some teams might lean towards. But he's a solid guy. Ja'Lynn Polk would be a nice receiver at pick 45 for us, especially if we don't plan on acquiring third and fourth round picks. Now, the Saints acquire picks by trading up, so I expect them to package a bunch of fifths to move up into the fourth round, something like that. But Walker and Polk should be gone before the halfway through the third round at least. And another guy in that second or third round spot is Jermaine Burton out of Alabama. 6 foot, 194 pounds. He's a solid wide receiver. Not so much run blocking. Yeah, none of these guys projected to go in the second round are very good run blockers, with the exception of McConkey, who's just okay at it. A lot of the first round guys are pretty good run blockers as well, except for Keon Coleman and Troy Franklin. You get one of those top 7 guys, you're getting a guy with size, speed, who can catch and can block. You get into the second round, you start looking at these potential playmakers. Burton's a solid all-around guy. 6 foot, 194. Not sure what you're hoping for if you draft a guy like this is that he's better than your number 4, number 5 guy, and you hope you hit gold. He's a solid player. I wouldn't take a chance on him until the third round, but he's in play for the Saints at that second round pick 45. Now we're going to mention some guys that I think have a late second into third round grade. And these guys should all be there when we pick at 45. And whether the Saints want to reach for him or not, I don't know. And we're going to start with Marcus. We're going to do this. Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint out of Georgia. Now, I'm mentioning him before I mention all these other studs because I think this is the guy that's rising up the boards the fastest currently. We've got the scouting combine in about a week and a half, and then we've got pro days going on after that. A lot of the measurables will be changed after that. A lot of people are going to rise up the boards, but currently he's the biggest riser out of Georgia. 6'1", 205 pounds. I would have projected he was going to go in the third or fourth round, but he's getting second round buzz now. And what I like about Rosemy-Jacksaint is he's solid at everything. A really good run blocker. And he's got good size at 6'1", 205 pounds. So, yeah, I think he's a guy that would. Can you do it, pup? My dog's trying to move. Hey, my good boy. He's a sweetheart. Yeah, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint. Before I would have said, yeah, third round, fourth round. No, this guy might be worth taking with the 45th pick. He's a solid all-around guy. I love that run blocking grade. That gets me excited. I mean, if you can go out there and be a productive wide receiver and still be good at run blocking, yeah, I'm stoked about that. Like I say, though, not a lot of them that fall in this area are good run blockers. And now I'm going to mention one of the stars of the Senior Bowl, Roman Wilson out of Michigan. 6 foot, 192 pounds. He's a solid second to third round projection now. I've seen him actually get drafted in the first round in a couple of mocks. Kind of nuts. I don't think he's worth a first round pick. But he's very well could be a second round draft pick consideration for the Saints. Because much like McConkey, Roman Wilson showed the ability to get open, quick burst acceleration moves. He can get himself open, catches the ball. He's not a good run blocker. McConkey's got Wilson beat at that. But Roman Wilson showed off at the Senior Bowl, and his stock's going to be rising. Now, the Saints fall in love with Senior Bowl players all the time, and if you go back and watch any of my videos on these positions, I talk a lot about the Senior Bowl guys because I'm trying to focus on what the Saints might want, and Senior Bowl studs are something that the Saints are certainly interested in. Overall, I think Roman Wilson's a third round kind of guy. And, yeah, he would have to get a lot better at run blocking for me to get excited about him with the second round pick 45. But he's in play, and he is a solid wide receiver. Another guy that's in play in the second round, though he should be drafted in the third round, Ricky Parasol out of Florida. I've watched a couple of games and every time of Florida's, and every time I watched him, Parasol was making these excellent possession, third down reception, keep the chains moving kind of player. He had a couple of really nice catches. 6'1", 192 pounds. He stood out to me, on the tape. So I think this is another guy that's a solid wide receiver to grab in the third round. And you're feeling good about it because you think you may have yourself a nice possession piece, a slot guy. A lot like Roman Wilson, a lot like Ladd McConkey. Doesn't have great size. 6'1"'s pretty good, 192 pounds. He would be a bit of a reach for me at 45. But there's a place for him on any team. He just seems like a solid guy, a guy that is going to be a slot possession guy, third down. You can look to him. Doesn't get much better than that, right? Well, we'll see what the Saints like. Now I'm going to mention out of Western Kentucky, Malachi Corley. He was high on my boards to start with. I kind of have been a little cold on him lately, but it's because he's basically a running back. And the way he was used at Western Kentucky was they threw him screens like constantly. And he would make these yards after catch moves. And great. That's what I want. I want a guy that can make moves. In this offense, Kubiak's offense, if he can line up as a running back and a wide receiver, and he can get the ball in his hands and make something happen, yeah, that's the kind of guy that would fit great into this offense. He's 5'11", 210 pounds. That's why I say he's built like a running back. He's not much of a run blocker, though, but he can catch the ball. He doesn't drop anything. And so, solid hands, interesting piece. I want the Saints to get somebody that can get yards after catch, and this guy certainly can. He's the yards after catch king. So, do you take a chance at wide receiver on a 5'11" guy who seems like he would be just built to play a certain, style? That's the question with Malachi Corley. You get a guy like that in the third round, and you feel really good about it. But if you reach for that guy at 45, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Another guy who's 5'11" that could go in the second round, Jacob Cowing out of Arizona. 5'11", 175 pounds. He's not built like a running back. He's way too light. I mean, Corley's got 35 pounds on him. They're the same height. So Cowing's 5'11" and really light. But he's a playmaker with the ball in his hands as well. And he's solid. He always catches the ball. And, taking a chance on a little guy like this, to me, isn't so bad when you have third-round picks or fourth-round picks. But, yeah, if you're missing a guy that's got potential playmaking ability, I've always looked at the bigger wide receivers as better potential. But, lots of smaller players have success in this league. I mean, we see it all the time. Zay Flowers had a pretty good year this year, and I avoided him in last year's draft because of his size. Tank Dell, before he got injured, which is something you worry about with smaller guys. Yeah, he was having a great year. It's not like these smaller players can't make it in the NFL, especially with the playmaking ability of someone like Cowing or Corley. And Wilson and Parasol as well, their ability to get open and catch the ball. You don't want much more out of your wide receiver than that. Some yak would be good. So Corley and Cowing, interesting there as well. Now we're going to talk about three other guys that could be drafted with pick 45, but they're more like late second, third round picks. And these guys actually have a bit of size to them. Jamari Thrash out of Louisville, 6'1", 185 pounds. Touch light, but Thrash is a good all-around player. He's a pretty good run blocker. And at 6'1", I think we're okay as far as the size goes. He could put on a couple more pounds. He comes to Louisiana. He probably will. I like Jamari Thrash. I like him a lot as a third-round pick, but not so much at pick 45. He is a good run blocker, though, and, solid size. Another guy at roughly the same size that's a decent run blocker is the third wide receiver out of Washington, Jalen McMillan. This is the first guy that's been mentioned on my list that's actually a number 3. So now we've got the third wide receiver from Washington going off the board before other guys' number 1s. Washington had an exceptional wide receiving class, a group in this class, and 6'1", 192 pounds for McMillan. McMillan's a solid guy. To me, he seemed like a reliable kind of guy, someone that could come in. If someone gets hurt, someone that can come in and play a number 2 spot and fill that role for a couple of games. I don't know if he's much better than that to me. I think in the third round, he's a steal. But I think in the second round at pick 45, I just don't know if you're getting enough top end there to warrant that. I mean, he's a solid guy. And he may turn out to be a great pro. Probably will. Just feels like he's a little lower than 45. But, if you get him in the third round, then you're happy to have him. He's right there. Another guy that I feel the exact same way about is Jerry Rice's kid, Brendan Rice out of USC. 6'3", 210 pounds. And yeah, he's got the bloodline. So the thing is, I feel like being Jerry Rice's kid that, he would be at the top of this draft board with Marvin Harrison's kid, right? And he's not. He's inconsistent. He's a different type of receiver than Rice ever was because he's so big. So is Marvin Harrison Jr. But I like what I see in Rice. And I think even though he's probably been playing football his whole life and everybody thinks he should be popping off the page in the first, second round, something like that, he's not worth a second round pick. But he's a pretty good run blocker. He's got great size. And you grab a guy like Rice in the third round, and now we're talking. I look at A.T. Perry, and I look at Brendan Rice, and I think to myself, when it's all said and done, these guys might be the same kind of player, but I think you get Rice, and chances are he may end up a better player than Perry. Right there. I mean, those two, that's where I'm at. You get somebody like Thrash or McMillan or Rice. You've got a guy with size that can come in, compete to be an X receiver, and potentially could be better than talent-wise than A.T. Perry. Certainly a guy like Lynn Bowden Jr. Okay, those are your second and third round projections and potential reaches for the Saints at 45. Now, we're going to go and look at some players that you're not going to get early, and these guys might not even make it to the fifth round. And here's where the issue I have with the Saints draft this year, we need to get third and fourth round picks. So many good players there. If you're looking for players with decent size, somewhere in the fourth round, I'm going to start with Javon Baker out of UCF, 6'1", 208 pounds. Not a good run blocker. He's got good size, good speed, showed a lot at the Senior Bowl. He might move into the third round with that performance there at the Senior Bowl, but he's on everyone's radar now. Javon Baker, you would hope he lasts till the fifth round, but it's not going to happen. You need a third or fourth round pick to go get this guy. Another guy with decent size that has a lot of potential, Luke McCaffrey out of Rice. Yes, that McCaffrey family. I'm not sure if he's a son or a nephew. They're all pretty good, McCaffrey out of Rice, 6'1", 202 pounds. He's got fine size. I've got him solidly getting picked in the fourth round. He was, inconsistent, and he's not a good run blocker at all. You feel like, though, there's potential there with the bloodline. And in the fourth round, I don't think you're taking much of a risk drafting a McCaffrey in the fourth round. That's how I feel about it. Another guy that's interesting is Zakir Franklin out of Ole Miss. 6'1", 185 pounds. He's right in that fourth or fifth round area. And, he's highly regarded by a lot of these draft sites. So he's not a good run blocker either. But he's got decent size, and that's what these guys I'm mentioning now have in common. Is if you move back into the fourth round by packaging fifth round picks, then Javon Baker, Luke McCaffrey, these guys might be someone you're going after, or you're hoping they last to the fifth round. Zakir Franklin might not last to the fifth round either. And I don't think you package to move up and grab him. But, he's highly regarded, as well as Joshua Cephas out of University of Texas, San Antonio. 6'2", 185 pounds. Kind of light for as tall as he is. Probably going to go in the fourth or fifth round. He's highly regarded among a lot of these boards as well. He's not a good run blocker. But he's somebody that, a lot of teams are high on. And, he's got playmaking ability and he's got really good size, height. I just wish when guys are this big that they could actually run block. And all four of these guys, Baker, McCaffrey, Franklin, Cephas, not good run blockers. But if we trade up into the fourth round, there's the wide receivers we could consider, and we hope they fall into the fifth round. And now I'm going to mention some guys that are really short. But they are playmakers, and they should be there in the fourth round, fifth round, somewhere around there. And I'm going to start it with Malik Washington out of Virginia. Might be the best playmaker in the draft. 5'8", 192 pounds. He's not a good run blocker. He may be drafted in the third round. That's how much ability this guy's got. Because of his size, I expect him to last to the fourth round, but no, he might go in the third round. He's a stud. If you watch Virginia, you'll watch Malik Washington play pretty good. Another guy that's really short, Isaiah Williams out of Illinois, 5'8", 184 pounds. He is projected to go in the fourth or fifth round. I think he was at the Senior Bowl and he looked pretty good. He is not bad at run blocking for as small as he is. And I like a guy who's highly regarded on the field. And even though he's got a size limitation, he still wants to run block. And not terrible at it. So I like Isaiah Williams. I like him in the fourth round or fifth round. It's interesting if the Saints move up into the fourth round to grab a guy this small. But a lot of skill, a lot of potential to be out there and to do more than just play slot receiver and obviously run for passes, You might actually do something run blocking. It's not great. He's too small to be great. Another guy that's pretty good at run blocking despite his size is a guy we're all familiar with here in Louisiana out of Tulane, Jaquan Jackson. He had a great Senior Bowl as well. He just kept getting open and kept catching the ball. And when you catch the ball every time they throw it to you, it'll raise the eyebrows. Some of these wide receivers, I love it. I love it. I love it because when I was a kid, I couldn't get on the field. I couldn't play football in high school because I was a little short, 5'9", a little light. I was like 165. And, I was like the fourth or fifth fastest guy. I wasn't the strongest guy. So they just put people that were taller, stronger, faster than me on the team. And they'd run out there and drop every ball. And I was in the, stadiums flirting with the cute girls in the band and watching the team that passed me up drop ball after ball after ball. So catching the ball is pretty cool. It's pretty good stuff there. Jaquan Jackson, nice. You catch the ball, you show a willingness to run block. 5'9", 185 pounds. Jackson was a 5th, 6th, 7th round projection until the Senior Bowl, and now we're talking possibly 4th round pick. I don't know if the Saints would package 5ths and move up and grab him in the 4th round, but yeah, I like him. All around solid guy. And the last little guy I'll mention in this 4th, 5th round area is Taj Washington out of USC. 5'9", 177 pounds. Certainly the lightest out of the bunch, but this guy plays way bigger than 5'9", 177. When you watch USC, he gets open, he makes plays, he's got solid hands, and he's not that bad at run blocking for his size either. So despite Malik Washington, who I've mentioned in this group of shorties, despite Malik Washington, the other 3 guys are decent run blockers. Isaiah Williams, Jaquan Jackson, and Taj Washington, who is another one of those guys like Malik Washington, who's such a good playmaker. Despite his size, he may be drafted in the 4th round and would be a great pick for the Saints in the 5th round. And those are also guys the Saints could package 5ths and move up to try to get. All right, I'm going to mention one guy here before we go into the you've never heard of him category of this video. This guy you have heard of, Johnny Wilson out of Florida State, 6'7", 237 pounds. He's probably going to get drafted around the 3rd or 4th round. He's a great run blocker if you're looking at just wide receivers. The best run blocker out of the bunch, but, you know, he's the size of a tight end. And as far as run blocking, I'm not sure if he's going to be a great run blocker as a tight end. I think he's a guy that's an unusual piece. And he may fit into this system that the Saints are expected to run. A guy who can play tight end, who can run block good enough, but still be split out on the outside and be a threat in the passing game. You know, so I look at Wilson as a potential tight end. You just got to get him to be better in line blocking. And but as far as a piece that you move around that has a size advantage, speed advantage over a lot of safeties and linebackers, you know, Johnny Wilson's an interesting guy that could fit in this team, perhaps. I will mention Wilson again when I do tight ends. Now we're going to mention guys that a lot of you may have never heard of. And yeah, I did some homework for all of this. These are all guys projected to go from the bottom of the 4th round through the 7th round. So these are all guys that should be there when the Saints have their plethora of picks in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round. And we're going to start with the 2 guys out of Texas that aren't number 1 and number 2. Jordan Whittington out of Texas, 6'1", 204 pounds. He might get drafted in the 4th round because his stock's rising right now. Not a lot of people have heard of him, but it's rising now. Not sure how Scouting Combine is going to affect these guys that I'm about to mention, but they're all very interesting players for me because they fall into that late 4th, 5th round or later. And it's pieces that the Saints could use. What I like the most about Whittington, besides the fact that he's got decent size, is he's a great run blocker. Exceptional run blocker, actually. The only one that comes close to Johnny Wilson on the wide receiver list as far as run blocking goes. And Wilson's got the advantage of being 6'7", 237. Whittington, 6'1", 204. Run blocking grade is so good. But, yeah, I would take a chance on him, certainly in the 5th round. And I mentioned that before. If we're going to run the ball good, we need good run-blocking wide receivers. But we don't want a bunch of Traquan Smiths running around out there, Lynn Bowden Jr.'s. And the only reason they're out there is because they can run block. Maybe Whittington falls into that category. Maybe he's just a really good run blocker, and he'll have to work on other things to be an all-around good wide receiver. But when you're on a team like Texas that has 2 great wide receivers ahead of you, I can understand how there's a lot we don't know about Whittington. And he's a guy that I would take a chance on. And yeah, that run blocking grade gets me excited. The fact that he's not a huge guy, but he's so good at it. And he's high on a lot of people's boards right now. Like I said, maybe fourth round pick. But the number 4 wide receiver out of Texas, Isaiah Neyor, he probably won't get drafted until the 5th round or later. 6'3", 215 pounds. Great size, a lot of potential here. And like I said, once again, on this great Texas team down the charts. And you wonder if there's a lot there that we haven't seen. But he's got potential. And what I like the most about him is, once again, a really good run blocker. So, yeah, I got to give it to Texas. They probably had the best wide receiving core out of everybody, even though Washington had 3 bona fide top 3-round talent. I like these guys out of Texas. Another guy that's rising up the boards right now from a very small school, Ryan Flournoy, Southeast Missouri State. 6'1", 197 pounds. This guy may be drafted in the 4th round because he is getting some buzz right now and rising out of that 5th round area. Is he the small school kind of guy the Saints would package picks to trade up into the 4th round and get? I don't know. Is he the kind of guy that would last until the 5th round? Probably not. That small school stuff, probably the reason why he's not going to get picked till at least the 3rd or 4th round. But yeah, there's a lot of potential there, including the fact that he is a really good run blocker, and I'm looking for that in the late rounds. People that are hot right now: Whittington, Flournoy. They've got some buzz going right now, and 6'1", 197 pounds. And really good run blockers, which means they could see the field a lot as a late round pick. And if they progress, and I'm hoping A.T. Perry gets better at run blocking. So, we can depend on him out on the field a lot. Somebody else in the 5th round we could be looking for, who's also getting some buzz, Cornelius Johnson out of Michigan. 6'2", 213 pounds. He's probably a 5th round projection, but a lot of people like him right now. He's rising up the boards. He's just okay at run blocking. He's got good size though, and you can get a lot better there. Overall, good size, good athlete, good speed. A lot of potential there with Johnson out of Michigan. And one more big guy I'm going to mention here. Not so big, but rising up the boards from that 5th round area into possibly drafted in the 4th round. Hayden Hatton out of Idaho, 6'1", 209 pounds. Just okay at run blocking. He's willing. He's got decent size. And, yeah, he's getting just enough buzz where he might fit into the 4th round. But, yeah, these are 5 guys I wanted to mention that I thought could be there in the 5th round. And you may not have heard of them. So Whittington and Neyor out of Texas. Flournoy out of Southeast Missouri State. Cornelius Johnson out of Michigan. And Hayden Hatton out of Idaho. All of them at least 6'1" or more. All of them not terrible at run blocking. And all of them would be a decent piece in the 5th round. Now we're going to mention, and the rest of these guys are 5th round picks, but I think people that the Saints could be interested in. I'm going to start with Troy Omeire, Arizona State, 6'4", 215 pounds. Very good run blocker, nice size. If you're going to grab someone late, like you did A.T. Perry in the 6th round. Now, look, I had A.T. Perry graded as a 4th round guy. So if a 4th round guy is sitting there in the 6th round, yeah, you grab him. I think there's a lot of the same potential with Troy Omeire here. 6'4" is just massive, and 215. So, and he's shown to be a good run blocker. So you get his game together. You have a nice little late pick. Certainly someone that can compete with A.T. Perry. I think A.T. Perry is a solid receiver. I think on our team, he's a number 4 wide receiver. And I think our wide receivers are pretty good with Olave, Rashid, and A.T. Perry. You know, I think we're a good wide receiving core, just the 3 that we have. I want to get more pieces, and I want pieces that might be better than Lynn Bowden Jr., you know, or Keith Kirkwood. And these guys all have size that I'm mentioning right now. Troy Omeire. Don't know if he'll be your ex wide receiver, but, you know, come in and compete with A.T. Perry and have the NFL physical tools. I think Omeire, as a good run blocker, is someone to look for in the late rounds. Deion Colzie out of Notre Dame. Another massive dude, 6'4", 211 pounds. Expected to go in the 5th round. He's a decent run blocker, too. Good size, you know, big program. If you're looking for a guy with size and you're going to take a chance late in the draft, these are guys not a lot of people are talking about. And I think the Saints might be interested in them. They all are huge. Another one, Dante Thornton Jr. out of Tennessee, 6'5", 214 pounds. You know, Saints like their Tennessee players. Don't know if they have that connection anymore in the coaching staff for that. Not sure what Kubiak's looking for. You know, we talk about it, and we've gone through this, and I'm letting you know if these guys are good yak, if they're good possession guys, or if they're good guys because of their size. So if we're looking for a guy with size, there's plenty of them late. Another one I'm going to mention, Malik McLean out of Penn State, 6'4", 201 pounds, expected to go in the 5th or 6th round. Just okay at run blocking, but these guys, Omeire, Colzie, Thornton Jr., and McLean, are all 6'4", 6'5", huge, massive dudes. Should be there in the later rounds when we have a ton of picks. And now, before my video hits an hour long, I was excited about doing this one, and I've shown you guys dozens of players. I'm going to mention 2 other guys. I don't have prompts for them up here, but Quadarius Davis out of Texas Southern, Cody Jackson out of Tarleton State. So Quadarius Davis, 6 foot, 193 pounds, out of Texas Southern. Might be a 7th round or undrafted guy, and I think the Saints would be interested in him, as well as Cody Jackson out of Tarleton State. 5'11", 180 pounds. It was tough to find pictures of these guys. Both of them late guys, but I think small school guys that the Saints might take a chance on or have high priority undrafted. So there you go, guys. That is my breakdown of the wide receivers. I couldn't wait to get into this one. Did a lot of work. Like I said, I'm no expert at the draft. I show you face value. I tell you who these players are, give you their measurables, not even arm and hand because we're not at the scouting combine and pro days. I just give you the basics. Who they are, how big they are, what's the initial buzz on them, where they're supposed to go in the draft. And you guys have this video to watch. You've got all these names to look at. I hope I piqued your interest with some guys you didn't hear of before. And I hope you enjoyed all of this work that I put in. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10. We're going to break down the rest of the offense in this series. And until then, who do you think the Saints should go for? Let me know in the comments. Until then, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?